Hi guys, today we're going to talk about how to mix resin. So a lot of the instruction sheets that come with resin just give a general time to mix it for, but this simplifies it a bit too much and there's a few other things we need to consider. This video will cover what tools to use, how to measure the resin, and how to double mix it to get a good cure. So the first thing to consider is what to mix it with. It's best to choose something that has a large surface area because it'll move the resin around more than something skinny, and it helps the hardener to get mixed in properly. It's also a good idea to avoid anything porous because it'll leach tiny bubbles into your resin, so things like popsicle sticks aren't great unless you're using a vacuum chamber to get them out anyway. My favourite thing to mix with is a mini baking spatula, but there's lots of different options, so choose whatever's easiest for you. Anything made from plastic or silicone with a large flat surface will work well, so have a look around to see what you have already. If you have trouble mixing by hand, there's also mechanical options like stirrers you can add onto a drill, but these can also add more bubbles. Next, you want to choose what container you're going to mix in. Personally, I use plastic cups because they're cheap and you can get different sizes, which is good for different projects. I throw them out when I'm done because I don't want to risk future batches not curing, but you could try cleaning them out with a paper towel and some isopropyl alcohol if you wanted to. If you're mixing up larger amounts of resin, then bigger plastic containers or buckets can work well too. If you want something reusable, then you can also buy silicone mixing cups. You just leave the resin residue to cure and you can pull it out once it's done. There's also sometimes little flakes if you use these, but these can be removed with some tape pretty easily. Silicone will degrade over time though, so you'll need to buy new ones every so often. Once you have your tools ready, the next thing is to make sure you get the right ratio of resin to hardener. Different resins use different methods for this, and it can either be by weight or by volume. It's really important to know which one is used for your particular resin. You can't just directly convert them because the resin and hardener have different densities, so it's best to follow the instructions for your resin. If you're mixing by weight, the scales need to be sensitive enough for the amount of resin that you're mixing. For example, bathroom scales wouldn't be good for mixing small amounts because they aren't very accurate for lower weights. The more sensitive the scale, the closer you can get to the correct ratio. However, it also needs to go high enough for the amount of resin you want to mix because scales have a maximum weight cutoff. Many scales will state what both of these are on them so that you can choose the right one for your project. I find measuring by weight easier than measuring by volume because you can just do it in one cup and you can get it pretty accurate. If you have a ratio that isn't just 1:1, you'll need to do some quick maths to work out how much resin to use. If you have any trouble with this, you can just Google resin ratio calculator and it'll work it out for you. Make sure to tear the scale once your cup is on it, and then you can just pour your resin and hardener. When mixing resin by volume, what method to use depends on what type of cup you're using. If you're using the cup that already has measurements on it, you can just pour the resin and hardener directly into the cup and mix them together. If you don't have measurements on your cup, then you can make your own lines using a permanent marker, as long as you have a resin that's measured by a 1:1 ratio. You'll need to use 3 cups for this method though, one each for the resin and hardener, and a third one that you pour both into after measuring them. You don't want to just pour the hardener into the resin because some of it will be left behind on the sides of the cup, so the ratio will be a little bit off. The other thing that could put the ratio off is if you measure less than the minimum pour amount for your resin. With resin being fairly pricey, it can be tempting to mix a tiny amount if you don't need much for your project. But if it's less than the minimum, it's much more likely that the ratio will be too far off to achieve a proper cure. For example, being 1 gram of hardener off out of 10 grams is going to be a bigger deal than being 1 gram off out of 100. The less that's poured, the more exact the measurements have to be. Each resin is different for how much it can tolerate being off, but for very small amounts, it might not be possible to get it close enough. The other factor is that there may not be enough heat in very small amounts for the resin to cure, even if the ratios were exact. Some companies will specify a minimum mix amount, but not always. In general, if you're only mixing a few tablespoons worth, it's likely to cause problems. The minimum I try to stick to is 12 grams, but that's with a heat mat for curing, so it might be different for your setup. Once you finish measuring the resin, the next step is to begin mixing. You'll find that the resin will start to go cloudy and streaky, and this is a good way to tell how mixed it is. When the resin's fully mixed, it should look completely clear again. If there's any streaks, it means that there's unmixed hardness still. While you're mixing, it's a good idea to scrape the sides and bottom of the cup, because this will dislodge any hardener that gets stuck. Once the resin looks totally clear, it's important to then double mix it by getting a new, clean cup, pouring the resin into it and mixing again for a short time. This will leave behind any hardener still stuck to the sides, because scraping usually won't get all of it. As you pour, aim to transfer just the bulk of the resin, and don't wait for the resin to drip out, as it's more likely to not be fully mixed. I also like to wipe off my stirring tool before mixing again, so that I know there's no hardness stuck to that either. If you want your resin to mix together easier, you can heat the resin bottle in a warm water bath before you start. This will lower the viscosity, which makes it easier to mix the two parts together. This does make it set quicker though, so you might have to work faster than usual. Resin can also set really fast if you leave too much in a cup, because it can be above the recommended pour depth, so you might not want to mix too much in one go if you're using a faster setting resin. If you're still having curing issues, even with double mixing, there's also several other things that can cause problems and prevent resin from curing fully. I'll be going over these in my next video, so feel free to subscribe and press the notification bell if you'd like to hear more. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it, and thanks so much for watching.